this is what happened to me and that's okay. It wasn't my fault. It's actually shaped me into the person I am today. And there's nothing wrong with that. So
That's what stigma does, doesn't it? It creates that second story, which no one needs, on top of your real story.
Yeah.
So then you're battling between your real story and then the story that the stigma creates for all young people. So we would like to acknowledge and pay our respects to the Kaurna people, the traditional custodians whose ancestral lands we gather on. We acknowledge the deep feelings of attachment and relationship of the Kaurna people to country, and we respect and value their past, present and ongoing connection to the land and cultural beliefs.
Hello everyone, welcome to the Voices in Action podcast with Create Foundation SA team. This podcast is called Voices in Action, Journey in Care.
We are excited to be releasing our first podcast series. We have episodes lined up to appeal to the out-of-home care sector, fostering change and advocating for a better future for young people in care. We hope this podcast is helpful for children and young people in the care system and inspires you that you are a valuable human being.
We acknowledge that the topics discussed can be potentially triggering, so we encourage you to take care of yourself. Check in with yourself at the end of each episode and seek support if needed. We've listed some support services in the show notes. Hi everyone, welcome back to the Voices in Action podcast, Journey into Care. Today we're going to be interviewing Bella, and today's topic is Snap That Stigma. Welcome Bella, and we've also got Fabian here today alongside with me. Do you want to say hi first, Fabian?
Morning everyone, hope you're well.
Yeah, you've been well, Fabian?
I have, thank you.
That's good. We're super excited to have Bella today. Do you want to introduce yourself, Bella, and talk a little bit about what has brought you here today?
Hi, I'm Bella. I'm 26 years old and I'm here to talk about my care experience. I was in kinship care from the age of 5 to 18 years old.
Oh, we're so excited to have you here, Bella. So Bella has aged out of Create, but still definitely very involved and super excited to discuss Snap That Stigma today. Bella, do you want to share a little bit about how Create has played a role in your life?
Yeah, so I didn't engage with Create all too much when I was in care, but I did when I was 25. I was on my placement with Key Assets and I reached out to Laura, and Laura was amazing and helped me all the way through when I was struggling and really connected me to where I needed to go. And I wish I found out sooner about Create.
So Bella's also studying. What did you study, Bella? I remember when you first came to Create.
Yeah, so I did a bachelor in social work. I am officially graduated now. So my 4 years to 7 years, because I did it part-time, is officially finished. Yeah. And I am now a consultant doing social work and also just combining that with my lived experience. And I'm also a carer. So I'm a kinship carer for my 2 younger sisters. Yeah. So I'm just blending a bit of all my lenses together and trying to make that difference, I guess.
Yep. We're so excited.
Everyone's going to do it to you, Bella.
Well, fingers crossed.
Okay, let's get started with the questions.
What's some of the stigmas about being in care or assumptions people have made about you?
I think initially it was that being in care means that there's something wrong with you. And I felt a lot of shame with that story or narrative about me. And also because I don't look like a stereotypical person in care, for whatever that means, it also means that my trauma is sometimes undermined and it's not seen as traumatic as what it could have been because I don't present in a certain way or I don't speak in a certain way. So it often meant that I had to change my narrative of what happened to suit other people, which was really hard. And I didn't really know how to navigate what it meant to be in care and have system involvement and not have my mum and dad. And yeah, I think that was really difficult for me. And then going into adulthood, that was extremely hard because then I had people asking me, well, even generic questions like, oh, do you have a brother? Do you have a sister? And I'd be like, yeah, I'm actually one of 10. Oh, what does that look like? Well, okay. So now I'm having to trauma dump and it weighs on you quite heavily. Well, because of the negative associations with it, you have to kind of like go forward and be mindful of what you're telling people, because it gets quite personal quite quickly, and then those assumptions come up, like what's wrong with her, what's wrong with her family, even though that might not actually be the case, and people might think I'm wonderful, I'm already putting that on myself, thinking that there's something wrong. So that's just shame talking over and over. And then I felt quite guilty in saying that story, because it meant that I was talking badly about my family. And one of my greatest values is family. So I definitely changed my narrative for a really long time and said, oh, well, this is what happened. And people didn't ask me questions because that seemed like a normal story. But then I decided to change back or reconnect to myself and say, actually, no, this is what happened to me, and that's okay. It wasn't my fault. It's actually shaped me into the person I am today. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's
what stigma does, doesn't it? It creates that second story, which no one needs, on top of your real story. So then you're battling between your real story and then the story that the stigma creates for all young people. So some young people could probably have 2 or 3 different stories, which only one of them is theirs.
Exactly.
So it's, that's yourself and many other young people have battled through those different challenging stories. So, and generally so far we see them all come out on top.
So let's maybe move on to the second question. What did it feel like having these assumptions placed on you?
Yeah, it's hard when everyone's looking at you and you're not allowed to fail, and you have to be strong, and you're almost like the face of resilience. And I'm like, well, what does that even mean? I feel so weak at times, and I feel like giving up. And I think, oh my gosh, how the hell am I going to do this? Can I say hell?
You can.
I'm just waking up and winging it. And I'm trying my best every single day. And when people put these assumptions of you being like different and, you're going to be this, or, you're going to be on the other side of that, just like your mother, like it's that conflicting message that you're just constantly
so much
getting.
Pressure.
It is. It's so the weight of that. And you don't want to fail. You're going to be just like your mother. I used to get that all the time. What you're doing here, that's something your mum would have done. So they were shaming me, and I was really determined to prove them wrong. And I kind of used that as ammunition to be like, well, watch me. Just watch me. I'm not going to be anything like that. But at the same time, I don't think there's anything wrong with who my mum is as a person. She has mental health issues, and she's a really unwell person, but she's actually got a really kind soul. So it was a bit of a conflict inside my brain. But also, just to touch back on the assumptions, when I met people that were from care through Create, I saw positivity, and I saw how great people are. And I met amazing young people, and I was in awe of just how they can flip a script. And I just sat there and I was just like, we can't have these assumptions and think that they're going to be one way, or even just like segregate them into that they're different, because we're all just living and we're all learning. And when we put us into a certain category of a minority, then it's already saying that there's something wrong with us. And that was really hard for me, because I didn't want to be anything different from anyone else. And I should be able to safely tell my story without other people kind of pitying me or being really delicate around. I'm just living. Just treat me like I'm a normal person.
We all want to be treated like human beings.
Exactly.
At the end of the day.
I'm trying every day. So
it's the main thing. Trying will lead you to other scenarios, other challenges, other doorways. We just got to try. That is the main thing. And through your actions and everything you're involved in, you're absolutely trying.
My sister said to me the other day, they're teaching them the power of yet. And if we don't succeed and we don't do the way that we thought we would, and they say, well, you're just not there yet. And now I've started to use it in my dialogue. I'm not there yet, but I will be. Just not yet.
It's a journey.
And unfortunately, through society and, Facebooks and social media's phones, we get that challenge of, we think we need to be there now. We need everything right now, here, quick, let's get it. So to still have patience in today's day, I suppose, with everything at our fingertips and at our doorsteps. Patience is the better game. And the long game, it's a hard game, but it will pay off in the end.
Exactly. What's the saying? Patience is a virtue.
Yes. It is. All right. So on that, Bella, did that make you want to prove them wrong, or did you start to question if they were actually true?
I just remembered a
Watch me.
story. When I got into uni, I was so nervous because I wasn't a smart kid. Like, I was always the problematic child that had to get pulled out of class because of my emotional outbursts. I had ADHD, but it was undiagnosed, so I was just going absolutely crazy in class. But that's another story. I applied for uni and I did it secretly. I didn't tell any of my friends because I just assumed I wouldn't get in. And I thought, well, if no one knows, then that's okay. That's fine. And I applied for a double degree in psychology and social science. And I was like, yeah, no, that's what I want to do, but I'm not going to tell anyone. I actually did get in. And I was like, oh my, this is so cool. And I went to my family, and I think two of my aunties and my nonna were there. And I said, oh, look. And then I went inside and I was spending time with my cousins. And then I heard one of my aunties say, well, that's because she's a kid in care. And she only got in because the unis have to give her a spot. And I remember thinking, how dare you say that?
Yeah.
Because I didn't even tell anyone.
Yeah.
I did this myself, and you're undermining the fact that I did that. And this is such a good moment for me, but you don't think I can do that?
Yeah.
And then all throughout my degree, I actually remembered that. And I remembered her thinking that I couldn't do it.
Yeah.
And no one thought I was going to be successful because I've had trauma. And I feel like a bit good because I feel both ways.
Bittersweet.
Yeah, it's bittersweet. But when I was going forward, I felt very determined to do it, and that motivated me. But then I felt like I couldn't let that down because then I was proving them right. And I was, it was the perfection that I was striving for, always having to be the best, always having to prove something. And I shouldn't have to prove anything to anyone.
No.
I was doing that because I wanted to, and they should have been supportive and created that environment. And that goes to talk about the system. When I was 18, I should have been connected to services and they should have held my hand because it was already difficult as it was. And I was blessed enough to be able to have a placement with my nonna where I didn't have to worry about moving out afterwards. And she would be like, move out. And I'd be like, no worries, pack my bags. If you could fold it neatly for me, that'd be very nice. And she would be like, I'm not going to do that. And I said, well, then I guess I'm not moving out. And that was that. And I didn't have to worry about all of those things.
But there is a lot of young people leaving care.
They do.
And that's their biggest worry. They don't know where there's no one properly supporting them once they leave.
Yeah.
And you're still so young at 18.
You don't know the world yet.
You have no.
You're a baby. I wish I could go back to being 18. Yeah.
How nice it would be.
I don't always practice this, but it's the assumptions that I made about myself, and I am my biggest critic. And
I wanted to talk about this. We are our biggest critic.
Yeah. And I think I felt there was something wrong, and if you look at children, you look to your mum and your dad for that love, the validation and security. Yeah. I didn't have that. And I often felt really alone. And as a child, when you don't know what's going on, that translates to what's wrong with me. Yeah. Why am I not lovable? Yeah. And my dialogue was very much attacking who I was as a person. And I made these assumptions about myself and really was kind of berating myself in my head. Like, that dialogue was so negative all the time.
So unhealthy.
It was terrible. Yeah. And then I had to stop and kind of say, hey, you're doing it. Yeah. You're okay.
Yeah. It's that self-talk. Yeah. We don't get
just judgment.
Yeah.
Always
judging.
And then I had to go into that wise mind mentality of saying what is true and what is false. You are doing very well for your age. You should be really proud of these things. Don't undermine it. You're hustling.
Yeah.
You've got self-determination.
Yeah.
You're showing up for
Yeah.
others.
Yeah.
Yes, you're not doing it perfect all the time, but what is perfect?
Nothing
So
is
I had
perfect.
to try to change the dialogue for myself and say that it's okay that this happened, and it doesn't define who you are. It just adds to who you are instead.
Was there anyone particular helping you, or was there a worker or a family member that helped you believe in yourself? Or a service or any time?
Yeah, so when it comes to like services or workers, my experience was very much hands off. I didn't really have much system involvement other than your little check-ins, and if I needed them to advocate for school, sometimes they came into meetings and said, "Oh, we gotta make sure that this one goes through," and that they made it happen in that way. But it's my nonna, to be honest with you. Me and her have the most funniest relationship. Sometimes she drives me insane. Yeah. And I like to say that she's my best friend, my worst enemy, the warden. Yeah. Oh, she's everything. My nurse. Yeah. I absolutely adore that woman. But I also she grinds my gears. But she was very much, no, you've got to do this. And she's a post-war baby. So it's like do or die. Do or die. You don't have a choice. You don't cry about what happened yesterday. Yeah. You have to continue forward. And the social work in me is like, no, but we've got to be a bit more mindful that what happened to us actually plays a role in this. And she's like, no, we don't have time to talk about any of that. Yeah. Let's go. And I think that there should be a balance, obviously. Yes, you've got to move on. You can't be a victim of your story. Yeah. But you do have to continue to move on. You can be mindful and sit in that space and go, okay, that actually was hurtful. This actually did have impact on me. And the way that I see the world is different now because of it. But that doesn't mean that I'm a victim. That I'm not a victim in this story. It just shapes me forward. And she was very much like, you got to go to uni. You've got to do this. You've got to work. Yeah. You're going to work.
So she did give you those values, those really.
And she was quite like firm on them too. So when it came to work, it was, you're going to go catch a bus and you're going to figure out how to catch a bus.
Yes, they're very hard in that.
Yeah, my nonna is Italian. She emigrated from Italy and came here, and she had to do it all herself. Yeah. And she had to raise 3 children, 3 girls by herself as well. So she had it really tough, and no one helped her, and she reminded me that often. So for me, it was very much the same thing. She's like, you've got to be able to make it on your own, and you can't rely on other people to be able to hold your hand and do things for you. If they do, then that's a blessing. If they don't, then you can't cry about it. You have to continue forward. So I would say my nonna was very much the biggest influence when I was growing up. But as an adult, especially after my placement, I started connecting and listening to people and catching up for coffees. And I've actually received a lot of help and just asking. Yeah. I think it's really important for all of us to actually give it a go. I always say, why not? You know, that's my thing. In my head, I go, ask the question. Yes. Ask the question, because you never know. It might just be a yes, or they might link you to the yes.
Yeah, or clarifies everything for you. It's all about clarifying answers. Yeah.
Yeah. If you don't do it, you're in the same position as what you were, and it is already a no. Yeah. So you might as well just do it. So I think asking the question to everyone or anyone might actually lead to what you need, and don't be afraid to actually ask for that.
I think you've answered the last question in a sense of what are some words of inspiration you could give to a young person in care other than ask a question. No, that was perfect. That flowed very nicely. So other than what you just mentioned, what are some other words of inspiration that you would give to young people?
Especially around assumptions and
the stigma
of being in care, and if they're still in care or even not even in care anymore, or
it would be to ask the questions and don't be afraid, but more to that would be to speak up. I think honestly it's really important to speak your truth, and don't be afraid of what other people are going to think.
So the right people. The Speak Up program we create, I'm hearing.
Yes, they should. Speaking up, your voice is valid and your voice should be heard. I often would say, well, who am I? Like, no one really wants to know what I'm I'm saying. I don't think I'm any special to anyone else. I don't think I'm above anyone else either. But the collective voice is what it comes down to. Or even put yourself in someone else's shoes. I would think about if it was my sister, would I want her voice to be silenced? Or would I want her to ask that question and tell me how she's feeling and tell me about her experience? Well, yes, I do. So then I should hold that to myself as well. Like, it's important for my voice to be heard just like everyone else's. And it does make that difference, the collective difference. And that's the only way we're going to change the system. And if we're not talking about policy and all of that, it's not necessarily about changing that, but it's the mindsets that we all have. And I was just saying to you before, Angela, that it's about the dialogue in society. When there's such a high stigma about something, we don't want to talk about it because it's taboo. Yeah. And when you say it, it's like, oh, okay, like, oh, that we care. Yeah. And then that other person will feel the shame and feel pitied, and like there is something wrong with them. But the more we talk about it, the less weight it has. Almost like, Harry Potter reference here, but Voldemort, we don't speak of his name. We don't speak of his name. So that gives him more power because he's seen as this like, well, he was an evil wizard. That's what he was. Yeah. But we gave it power. Yeah. And the more power you fuel to something, the more it impacts us. Yeah. But the more we talk about it, the less it impacts. And that I can say that for me personally. Yeah. I started talking my own truth and just saying it to people, but not doing it in a way that like was shameful. Like I was like, I was in care. And that's something that's a part of my story. And that meant like out of home care. And I used it as like an educational moment of trying to let them be encouraged to ask those questions. Like, don't be afraid to ask me. I'm not going to crumble. Yeah.
We just got to be curious.
Yeah. Have a curious mindset.
I've seen that. I think that's a huge problem, is the tippy-toeing around just asking a general question, because every young person picks up on that energy and that vibe of who's talking to them, and they can pick up when they're sort of hesitant around asking a question in care, which then will make the young person think like, oh, what, did they see something, or what are they thinking? Like, just ask the question. As an adult and as a worker, if you're listening to this, just be diligent in asking, but ask. Just ask them.
You can say it as simple as, look, I'm not an expert in this. Yeah. I'm genuinely curious about your story. Can you please let me know? And I'm sorry if I ask in the wrong way. I'm still learning myself. Yeah. And that like changes the power dynamics immediately.
And we don't know. As workers and carers, we don't know. We don't know.
Can't
we're
be
not
an
supposed
expert
to
in
know.
everything,
like,
can we?
We don't know. And this is why we're here to learn. Not to know, but to learn and, assist young people in their direction.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Bella. That was so special having you here today.
Thank you, Bella. Yeah, it's always amazing having you involved with Create. And, it's always a pleasure.
We really appreciate your wisdom and your experience and I feel like when I'm with you, I'm in an aura. I don't know.
Oh,
that's love your energy.
Same with you.
Bella, and
our conversations are always very insightful
and very deep. And I think that's what we need to have: deeper conversations and deeper growth and deeper learning.
Yeah. Yeah. And just an extra little note there for any kids that are listening, or anyone under the age of 25, definitely connect with Create. It doesn't have to be that you're going to all the events or, that it has to be so much like big kind of thing. It could actually just be linking to a service and having a conversation. And that's important. Like mine was simply an email being like, hey guys, I'm currently on my placement. I'm a kid in care, was in care. Can you guys help me out a little bit here? And I met the team and everyone was really real and nice. And I think that out of every organization that I've connected with, they're the most consistent and have just shown genuine care, even if it's a little message saying, hey, how are you? And I've aged out of Create's young consultant age group, and they still check up on me. And that there is just like, you don't have to do that. That's not your job to do that. You're just doing it out of care. And I think that that's a beautiful thing to do. And more organizations should employ that, because you're showing love and connection, and that's what people need in this world, is just a bit of realness.
Thank you, Bella. That's a lovely
Thank you, everyone.
Words around Create Foundation. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Angela, as well.
Thank you. Really love doing this and looking forward to the next episode. Thanks, Bella.
Thanks,
Thank
Bella.
you.
Thanks, Fabian. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to the episode of the Voices in Action Journey in Care podcast. Remember, we have support services listed in the show notes. If you liked this episode, spread the word and leave us a review. Thank you.